All right, so in your prospectus project, I want to make sure we have a little bit of time to work through this. Um, you'll see that it's question number 67. This is the only question you have for this week, and it pertains to kind of what I'm going to kind of discuss through it today and kind of explain what I'm looking at. Um, but question 67 is describe your leadership pipeline for equipping and releasing people for ministry. Um, So we're going to talk today. I'm going to kind of explain, show you a graphic of the leadership pipeline, kind of explain, and then you guys start building it out as we're going through. Because basically, what I'm looking at, a leadership pipeline is how are you going to get a person from um, being a disciple to helping disciple other people to learning how to become a leader to becoming a leader in whatever ministry, whether it's Sunday school teacher, small group leader,
I feel like we did
children's
this
director.
last year.
We did. We discussed it last year, but this is going to directly apply it into church planting. So yeah, we did mention. I did bring it up because we talked about a discipleship path.
Yeah.
This is a leadership path. So it's a little bit different. So discipleship path, you want to get a person going from lost to leading, and here we want to get a believer going from
Immediately.
boom. Yes,
Disciple.
5 minutes after they pray the prayer, you're pastoring our church now. I bet that has happened in some places. So anyways, so the phases that we want to discuss. Let me pull this up for everybody. And Josh, if you have a question, just hit the little ding button. I'm going to minimize you for a second. So let me explain the leadership pipeline because I want you to go ahead and start building that out here in class. That way it should be a little easier for your group to go. So here's what we consider. Oh, let me get back to
Just copy yours.
Okay, so a leadership pipeline from equipping and reproducing leaders. So this pipe, you see, I tried to make a pipe going up, but never really, not too much of a pipe. What you're trying to do, you're trying to get a person who's going from being a disciple to possibly even an elder pastor in your church. All right. So the first caveat, you see that there's three different colors. Realistically, the majority of your church, they're not going to all become elder pastors. I mean, if you look at your church body, you may have one pastor, a few associate pastors, you may have multiple elders or even deacons, whichever your leadership structure. Most of your churches are not going to have, if you have a church of 100, you will not find 99 who are qualified and ready to be an elder. It's just kind of practically speaking, that's not going to happen. Should we try to see that happen? I would advocate yes. In many underground churches in China, it's expected that if you become a Christian, you become a church planter. There's no questions that being a Christian equals being a church planter. To start a church in your home, basically. And so, in some places that is the case. I think we need to bring that to America a little bit more, but I think we'll do that more through like home group type things. Maybe not leading a full church because of our American context. But so each color here kind of is a stage. A lot of your people, you want everyone in your church to be green for sure. You definitely want everyone to be green. You want another really good, solid handful. Usually, there's about 20% or so who want to be that apprentice and leader type thing, leading different ministries or being prepped to be. Then you have an even smaller percentage, 5%. I don't know what the percentage is. A very small percentage will make it up to the orange. Now, you guys, by being at Bible college, by having a calling on your life, you are really aspiring to get all the way into the orange. Okay? And so most Bible college students are kind of looking at that. And so I want to kind of go through because there's different ways you can build out and kind of define the pipeline depending on your church structure. Okay, so these I've kind of generalized several different ones and tried to make it very just kind of simple. And so as we kind of talk through it, I want you to on your prospectus start to number out. So I want you to kind of number down because what you're going to do is you want to say we want a person who is becoming a disciple. So what does that look like? How is that happening, and who is helping them get that way? That's part of your description of the project. Then you want to do one for how are they multiplying disciples, how are they learning, how they become a leader. And so there's 6 here. Your pipeline may have 5, it may have 8 or 9. It's just going to kind of vary depending on your church structure. So foundation, Great Commission, going, baptizing, teaching, mission, community formation. So everything that we structure in the leadership pipeline builds around how is it fulfilling the Great Commission. All right, that'll make a little more sense as we go. So a disciple, their mission, what are they doing? All right, so some very practical things. Sunday morning team. Maybe they help pass out the bulletins, help set up, tear down, whatever small ministry. Maybe they're just serving on a Sunday morning team. Go ahead and get them involved in that. Get them involved in serving as soon as they become a Christian. Go ahead and get them used. Get them some ownership to the Sunday morning time. They're serving and sharing the gospel within a small group. So get them involved in a small group. And they also start teaching them some personal evangelism. When a person becomes a believer, they're not going to know all the fine points of doctrine, but they can share what just happened to them. As far as community, that idea of baptizing, becoming part of a community, their family, maybe they're getting their family involved in the life of the church now. They're becoming part of a D group. And a D group can be anywhere between like a one-on-one type discipleship relationship or a group of 2 or 3. Those are all very different, but get them in part of a D group. And I would always recommend whoever leads them to Christ should disciple them. If someone leads them in your church, say, "Hey, Pastor Derek, can you come and disciple this guy to lead to Christ?" You should automatically say, "No, I think you should." Well, I don't know how. Well, let me disciple you so you can disciple them. That's kind of the way it should go. And have them become a member or part of a small group. Now, this small group, as we go through, it could be a home group, a missional community, it could be a Sunday school class, whatever that kind of small group ministry is that your church has. You want them to be, from the very beginning, get them part of a small group, get them connected, and get them serving. And then as far as spiritual formation, you're teaching them how, in their discipleship, you're teaching them how to love God and others, how to practice and live the Great Commandment. You're teaching them spiritual disciplines and how that leads to obedience to Jesus. You're teaching them very, very simple stuff: prayer, scripture reading, giving, that sort of thing. And then just simple church attendance. Them being around the body of Christ is going to help form them spiritually in a lot of ways. A discipler, taking a little bit next step. And I would say that the discipler, you really, it's going to take a little bit of time for a new believer to get ready to actually share more than just their story. To actually disciple walk someone through. So I would say just a few months. I wouldn't drag this out. I wouldn't say, you need to go through a 2-year class and do all these other things before you can actually reproduce. I think they should be almost immediately reproducing. At first, sharing their story, getting some excitement, and then you're discipling them to become a discipler as soon as they become a believer. So they're really kind of intertwined in a lot of ways. But have them start to lead a D group. Have them, as they're sharing the gospel themselves, they start discipling others, and they start leading discipling someone. It's just reading scripture together and praying together. Have them still serving on a Sunday morning team, kind of learning that. As far as community, they're discipling their family. They're maybe even leading the D group, and they have a role in a small group. So like in ours, we have a girl named Lily. She's 21 years old, and she is just kind of on the ball with our calendar stuff. And so I gave her the role of organizing our monthly calendar. And so she lets us know these Sundays we're having lunch together. We meet on Tuesday nights now. What Tuesday night where we're going to be. We're going to be at Starbucks or something else. When the fair is in town, she let us know what day was best for everyone to go. So she coordinates that. That's her role. We would consider her a discipler because she's inviting her lost friends to come to a lot of these things. She's sharing the gospel with them. And we've given her a role in the small group. Spiritual formation, a lot of mutual accountability for spiritual disciplines, coming from even the D group and the small group they're part of. Maybe they're doing some new classes and studies your church is doing for folks. They're kind of growing a little bit more in some of that. And you're starting to analyze their spiritual gifts. You're starting to really figure out where they're really gifted so that their role in a small group or their role with a Sunday morning team is best utilized and it really fits them well and they thrive. All right, and so the majority of people are really going to kind of get here, and they're not going to really have a lot of desire to go to the next level because the next level has a lot more responsibility, a lot more requirements. I would say we should always be pushing our people to go to the next level. Not if everyone in your church is just content with just being a discipler, which we want them all to be that. Don't get me wrong, 100% from pastor down should be a discipler. Apprentice. Now, apprentice is something that in the Exponential book, they talk a lot about. And when I Skyped, you'll watch this lecture in 3 or 4 weeks. I think it's right after Thanksgiving with Dave Ferguson. He talked a lot about one of the key things for them in multiplying and building a culture of reproduction was to always have an apprentice for everything. And I think it's a brilliant strategy because if you're always infusing the idea of when I start doing something, I'm always bringing someone with me to learn under me and start doing it, then you're showing, not only are you preparing the next leader, but you're modeling for them to find an apprentice. So, Matt, come with me. We're going to go and start a new missional community on Wake Forest campus. Come with me and do it. Right? Well, 6 months later, we're still doing it. I've been investing in you. You're like, I can go start one on Winston State. So you go over and you start one on Winston State, and you bring Derek with you. Right? So you see already we have multiplied. We started with one group. Now we have the potential of three. And so that's why I think the apprentice thing is really big. And so an apprentice in this step, they're leading a group in evangelism as far as doing the mission. Maybe they're taking their small group and kind of maybe having some more ownership in leading that. They are helping to multiply discipleship groups. They are stepping up their serving, like on the Sunday morning time or if we're in the church. In their community, they're helping disciple families. Not only have they've been discipling their family, now they're discipling other families. They're being prepped for leading a small group, and they're being mentored by a leader. And so the leader in the group is bringing this person along. So in our small group now, our apprentice is Matt. So Matt's wife is a PhD student at Wake Forest. Matt has a regular kind of 9-to-5 job, and I'm starting to mentor him to become a leader for our group. If things work out for Calgary for us, or even if not, we want him to either start a new group or take over ours. And so I am prepping him right now by giving him a lot more ownership. He's doing a lot more planning and that sort of thing. And then for formation, there's still, again, mutual accountability and maybe some new classes and some new training on what it means to be an apprentice that you're probably doing as a church. So the second one, the blue, is becoming a leader. Now you see I have multiple arrows under leader because this is where your church structure, up until now, everything has been kind of standard, I guess. In your church, you hope to be making disciples who become disciplers, and they're being prepped and equipped for having, they're being trained for new roles in ministry. That should always happen regardless of your structure, whether you're a house church or a mega church, whether you are a more traditional church or you are a highly contemporary. It doesn't matter. You should always have disciples, disciplers, and apprentices, people who are being prepped and equipped for ministry. That's Ephesians 4:12. So if we're doing our job right, we're always investing in these apprentices. But the point is, you want them to become a leader. The way to multiply is always have a leadership development. And I would say that is actually the key to reproducing churches, whether you do multi-sites, reproducing even networks of churches, like what the exponential book will go into. Leadership development is absolutely essential to reproduction. And so a leader could be, here's where it really depends on your structure, your approach. The leader could be something like a Sunday school teacher. A lot of people who have become Sunday school teachers would just ask one Sunday, hey, can you start teaching next Sunday? Well, they weren't really prepped and trained. They have to struggle to figure out what it means to be a teacher for several months, but they could have just been put under another Sunday school teacher and trained for a few months. They would have been better set off. So this leader could be something like a Sunday school teacher. It could be a ministry team leader. Let's say that your children's ministry director, if you're a mobile church who's handling your tear down, or your setup and tear down, if you're an established church who's handling the connections and greeting ministry that's happening on Sunday morning. So it could be a team leader in that sense. It could be something like a small group leader or a missional community leader. So you actually, and on your prospectus, you're going to fill in this role. Okay, so you will say for you, if you guys are, let's say you guys are doing a Sunday school, that's your approach for small groups. Then here you will say your leader. You won't say leader. You'll say Sunday school teacher, because that's the kind of the pathway you want them to follow. You want them to become an apprentice Sunday school teacher. Then you want them to become a Sunday school teacher for a new class, or take over another class, or something like that. So you're going to fill this in on your prospectus, and you're going to describe what that looks like. So if you guys are doing missional community model, then you're going to describe what does a missional community leader do. What is their description? That's in that 2 to 3 sentences. So here in the leader sense, now remember this is another kind of a smaller percentage of your church. I would say, what if you had 100% of your church who were becoming leaders? You could multiply like crazy. You'd have such a pool to send out new churches, new teams, all sort of things. So as far as mission, they're starting small groups. They're not just have a role in one. They've been trained. They're now starting new small groups, whatever that looks like. Sunday school, home groups, whichever. They're also equipping others to multiply D groups. So I am working with our students in our gospel community, our mission community, to, with each other and with their lost friends, start new Bible study groups that are happening on campus. We're trying to equip them and get them ready to do that. They're also leading others in mission to the community. They're thinking now a little bit outside of their small group. They're saying, okay, what are we doing for our neighborhood? What are we doing for our city? What are we doing for our community? So these leaders are really having a little bit bigger vision as far as it comes to their mission. When it comes to community, they are again discipling families, but they are really becoming the shepherd teacher for their small group. Sunday school class, they are the teacher. They're looked to as the leader. It's a home group. They're almost like a under shepherd, we would say, a pastor who is pastoring that group. And they're also one of the key roles of a leader is raising up an apprentice. That is absolutely essential. Is that you're always looking for. So our group started meeting in January of this past year. So we've only been around for 11 months as a group. We basically had to take the summer off because all of our other students they were gone. So we took basically 2 months off in the summer. But so in that 9 months time, after about 3 months, I knew that Matt needed to be our apprentice. I just really knew that he was going to be the best one, no matter. This is before the Calgary competition came up, and I was looking for maybe a replacement. I just knew that the situation they were in life, they live here, they're going to be here for 3 or 4 years. His wife's in a PhD program, it's a residential thing. So they're going to be here. So I sought him out and started talking with him at the beginning of the summer about him considering becoming the apprentice. And so we kind of took the summer off, and we did some light things over the summer. But once we got back into September and got started back again in full gear, I said, "Hey man, I want you to consider being an apprentice." So he kind of discussed it, with his wife, and he said, "Yeah, I definitely want to do that." And so this coming Sunday, he's going to come to the first Gospel Community Leader Training that our church we do once a month. The leaders get together, so he's coming out for the first time this coming Sunday. So we're raising him up as an apprentice so he can become a leader, and it would be expected of him to start once he gets established in a new group or an existing group for him to raise up an apprentice as well. And as far as spiritual formation, again, mutual accountability for spiritual disciplines. You'll see that in all of them. But now they're leading classes and training. So if you're a leader, if it's one of your team, it's your children's ministry team leader. That's who this person is. Then they need to be leading the training in the classes, raising up the apprentice church children's ministry directors and other leaders. They need to be kind of leading those things. Now, as we kind of progress forward, getting to the orange, this is even a little bit smaller percentage, but you become more of a coach. Once you've been a leader and you kind of understand that and you're really able to speak into the lives of other leaders, then you become more of a coach. And a coach is really having some oversight of other leaders in the church. So I would even put a deacon under the coach level. I would say a deacon, in my view, is one who oversees an area of ministry, not in a elder pastor type thing, which most deacons in Baptist churches do. They function as an elder board, which I think that is unbiblical in its structure. If you're going to be an elder team, if you're going to act like an elder team, just call it that instead of calling it a deacon board and try to still maintain. We just have a senior pastor, but you're run by 5 other men called deacons. Just call it what it is and do it, and that's fine. Anyways, that's soapbox. So I would say a deacon is a coach because a deacon is overseeing, if you're talking about the, discipleship ministries of the church. Well, then maybe you have a deacon who's overseeing, if you don't have a pastor for it, depending on your size, well, maybe the deacon is overseeing the youth leaders, the children's ministry leaders, the nursery leader. They're kind of overseeing and make sure that people are being taken care of. I would say that would be a deacon kind of role. It could be something like a Sunday school director who's overseeing other leaders. It could be something like an associate pastor who, a pastor for, family ministry who is overseeing the youth and the children, that sort of thing. I think, Derek, that's pretty much what you kind of do. You're kind of in an associate pastor role in that sense. I would say you're at coach level because you're overseeing other leaders. That's what it means to get to a coach. And so your mission now is you're training leaders to equip. That is your part of your goal. You're reproducing leaders. You're identifying those apprentices and those. You're looking for new coaches. I got to find a guy who can really just oversee 3 or 4 of the leaders in this area, kind of thing. You're leading community ministries. You are looking out beyond the walls of the church, and you're trying to think, okay, how can I mobilize the leaders to lead their people for mission? So you're a little bit bigger picture view. You're a shepherd mentor for the groups and the team leaders, not just the members of the small group or the Sunday school class. You're shepherding the leaders at this point. We have a pastor who does this, Pastor Mark. He is our gospel community pastor. So he actually pastors us gospel community leaders as we pastor those who are in our gospel community. So he never really hangs out with Matt and Andrea and Lily and Lisa and John and Jeremiah and Chelsea or Jill or even Nokomis. He doesn't hang out with them. Now they can go to him; he's their pastor, so they can meet with him. But he invests in me so that I can invest in them, and so he oversees the 5 or 6 community leaders. This coach is being invested in by the elders, and a lot of times the coach is an elder. So this is where they kind of bleed in and intertwine a little bit. A lot of times you may have one of your elders is also kind of functioning in this role of a coach. Spiritual formation, again, there's mutual accountability for spiritual disciplines. They're doing a lot of teaching and mentoring, and they're assessing future leaders. We talked a lot last class about assessing church planters. Well, you should have someone in your church who is assessing whether people are really qualified to be leading the parking ministry. If they are a complete jerk and have a big issue of pride and want everyone to know it, you don't want them at the front door greeting new people. You are going through the wrong glass door. Get out of here. Exactly. You don't want that.
I own that job.
And then the last one, elder. So this is your pastor. I would say, I'm a plural elder guy. That's just how I like to structure it and believe in. That's not a huge deal. So this elder is something like a pastor. It'd be your future planter. If they've been able to mobilize other leaders and stuff, then they may be wired for planting. As far as mission, you're helping start new sites and churches. You are modeling the Great Commission leadership. You're casting a vision for the city. So this is lead pastor level, and the elders who are kind of leading the church together. If you have a plural elder model, if not, this would be your senior pastor. As far as community, you're the shepherd teacher for the whole congregation. So depending on your church size, if you have a house church of 7 and you're that lead elder pastor guy, it's very easy to shepherd and teach the whole congregation. But if you have a church of 500, you have to shepherd the shepherds. You can't just shepherd the 500 people. You can't maintain that. But you are teaching them, you're helping them and shepherding them by investing in the leaders who are investing in them. You're raising up future leaders, identifying, and you're doing a lot of networking so that your community is now broad outside the walls of your church. So now you're looking at the church in your city that's comprised of other churches. Spiritual formation is mutual accountability for spiritual disciplines, and you're preaching and teaching in order to model biblical exposition. So you're being spiritually formed yourself as you're preparing sermons and you're preaching and you're teaching, but you're also modeling how your people can exposit Scripture for themselves as well. So on your prospectus projects, go ahead and start kind of listing out what you would see under each of these roles. And then your assignment for this week is just basically list out. So if you do, I'll use the Sunday school model just as an example. So you want someone becoming a disciple, and then a disciple. You can name these whatever you want. You don't have to. These are guides. These aren't definitive. Apprentice, you can even call that a mentee or something. You don't really want to. But your leader, your leadership is going to have very different things. You're going to have, like in our church, we have leaders over the children's ministry. We have gospel community leaders. We have connections team ministry leader. We have a prayer ministry team leader. So you may want to maybe even list out, here are some of the leadership roles. Or if your church has really one, like we really want everyone to become a home group leader. That is like the big essential thing that we really want people to go through. You can focus on that. But just know that the leader, just like when I had them listed out, you may have several different ones. And what are you going to have for coach level? Maybe say your deacons or team directors or whatever you want to do. So I want you to go ahead and start listing out what fits your church planning approach that you guys have chosen, and take the next few minutes and kind of outline that, and then you can separate in your team who's going to do what to kind of make it happen, kind of answer the question.